I remember the moment I walked into my cousin's house that Sunday, arms full of groceries, expecting the usual casual chatter and laughter. But instead, my eyes landed on Laura, my aunt, bending over the kitchen counter, scrubbing dishes with hands raw and knuckles white, and no one seemed to notice. It was as if she didn't exist, invisible under the weight of endless tasks no one thanked her for. Greg, my uncle, leaned against the doorway, smirking, and made a joke at her expense. "Careful, Laura, don't break your back hauling all that." He chuckled, but the punchline stung sharper than any slap. She hefted the heavy bags upstairs alone, her shoulders trembling under their weight, her smile forced and brittle.
Emma, my younger cousin, rolled her eyes and muttered under her breath, "Why do you even bother?" The words weren't meant for me, but they cut just the same. I felt a pang of unease, my stomach twisting as I took in the exhaustion etched into Laura's face, the way her eyes drooped with silent pleading, the hollow laugh she tried to muster that didn't reach her tired gaze. Greg waved dismissively when she asked for help with the kids. "You're just visiting anyway," he said, as if her presence was a temporary nuisance, not a cherished family member. And yet she obeyed, bending back into her chores, washing the dishes again, enduring insult after insult in silence. A neighbor stopped by, her voice cheerful, oblivious to the tension. "You're so lucky to have Laura helping you out," she said, as if Laura's sweat and sacrifice were a free bonus rather than an act of love. I tried to step in to defend her, but my words were brushed off. I felt helpless, guilty, as if my voice was too small to matter. And then it happened. A plate slipped from Laura's hands, shattering against the tile floor. Not a word, not a sound, just a quiet snap of patience breaking. She left the kitchen, shoulders slumped, moving like a shadow through the house. I realized in that moment, this was more than fatigue. This was humiliation made flesh. I heard Greg mutter to Emma, "She's always overreacting," and the words hammered in my mind. They didn't see her. They never had. That night, I watched from the hallway as she retreated to her room. Her quiet sobs filled the air, raw and unfiltered, a sound heavy with years of being taken for granted. And in that moment, I understood. This was the start of a reckoning, a story of endurance ready to turn into justice. I never meant to read her diary. It was an accident, tucked between old photo albums, pages curling with age and secrets. But the moment I opened it, I was swallowed by Laura's past, the hidden wounds that explained so much of the quiet sorrow I'd watched in her eyes. She had always been the dependable one, the anchor in a stormy household. After her parents died, she raised her younger siblings, carrying responsibilities that should have belonged to adults, her own dreams buried beneath endless obligations. Every page echoed with sacrifices no one acknowledged. Her relationships, the diary revealed, had been treacherous gardens of disappointment. People she trusted, friends, lovers, had taken her kindness for granted, leaving her alone in the shadow of their selfishness. I read about her brother, struggling with his own life, while she postponed her own ambitions, giving him every chance, only to be ignored when she needed support. Birthday parties meant for celebration became mirrors of neglect. She had spent every one helping others, smiling while the world passed her by, unnoticed. A stab of empathy twisted in my chest as I realized how deep her endurance ran. Her first real job offer, a chance at independence, had been sabotaged by someone she had trusted implicitly. The betrayal left her in emotional debt, a quiet storm brewing beneath her calm exterior, and yet that suffering shaped her. It forged resilience, but also a deep-seated mistrust, a careful wariness that no one could breach lightly. I remembered her words, spoken one evening while we sat on the porch, her eyes distant. "I've learned to smile while bleeding inside." It was a confession I hadn't fully understood until now. She had given love freely, adopting stray animals and caring for them with devotion she never received in return. Her selflessness was unshakable, yet it had left invisible scars. I noticed it in subtle behaviors, the hesitation to trust fully, the brief flickers of anger when boundaries were crossed, the careful steps she took around those who might hurt her. Laura's life was a patchwork of sacrifices, unappreciated deeds, and silent endurance, each piece layered over the last until it became a tapestry of quiet suffering. And all the while, she had dreamed of freedom, of moving away, pursuing her art, creating a life for herself. Circumstances, obligations, and ungrateful family had chained her to a life that was never truly hers. Reading those pages, I felt the weight of her hidden pain, the magnitude of every insult and dismissal I had witnessed. I understood finally the full depth of her endurance and why the time had come for her to stop showing up, to finally claim herself. Laura stopped coming the way she used to. At first, it was subtle. Missed Sundays, unanswered calls, chores left half done like abandoned sentences. The house felt off, unfinished, and that alone was enough to spark irritation instead of concern. At dinner, Greg didn't even lower his voice. "She's getting irresponsible," he said, stabbing his fork into the plate like it was her fault. Emma laughed, sharp and cruel, repeating his words in a mocking tone, enjoying the performance. I watched their faces, saw how easily disrespect rolled off their tongues. When Laura did show up, the confrontations were small but vicious. A comment here, a sigh there. Every exchange cut a little deeper. I stood nearby, helpless, as my cousins pushed her with smirks and impatience, daring her to react. Then the rebellion started. Quiet, controlled. One night, she didn't wash the dishes. They sat there, untouched, a silent accusation. Another day, the shopping list stayed on the counter, ignored. No explanations, no apologies, just absence. The house turned tense, a war fought through silence and side eyes. Passive aggression hung in the air like smoke. Every room felt smaller, tighter, and slowly panic crept in. They didn't say it out loud, but they felt it. How much they relied on her, how much she had carried without ever being asked. She stopped talking to them. She only texted me now. Short messages, cryptic. "I'm tired. I can't do this anymore. I'm almost ready." Each one felt like a countdown. So, outside the family, people noticed. Friends whispered it to me when Laura wasn't around. "She seems drained," they said, "almost invisible, like she was fading while everyone else stayed comfortable." Then came the phone call. I heard Greg's voice through the line, sharp and entitled. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he snapped. "This is your role. Don't act like a victim." Laura didn't raise her voice. That scared him more. The call ended with silence so heavy it felt final. Look, that was when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I began documenting everything. The dismissive jokes, the expectations, the way her needs never mattered. Patterns emerged, ugly and undeniable. Abuse disguised as family duty. Neglect framed as normal. When Laura pulled back completely, the void was impossible to ignore. The house felt colder. Even the pets wandered the rooms, restless, waiting by doors that never opened for her anymore. And in that quiet, watching them struggle without the woman they treated like free help, I made a decision. I would not let her pain be rewritten as drama. I would not let her strength be twisted into blame. I started planning, not revenge born of rage, but truth sharpened into justice. The day Sophie walked through the front door, I felt the air shift. Laura's childhood friend, radiant and unapologetically direct, had arrived unexpectedly, bringing with her a flood of memories that only reminded me how long Laura had endured. Sophie didn't waste words. She looked around the house and said, "I remember how they always pushed you aside, Laura. You carried more than anyone should." Her presence validated everything I had seen, everything I had felt but struggled to articulate. Sophie told stories from the past, how people Laura trusted had manipulated her, how her kindness had been twisted into obligation. Each revelation reinforced the injustice that had been quietly poisoning this family for years. Laura listened, silent, absorbing it all, and then something changed. She no longer looked like the weary woman I had seen for so long. There was a quiet determination, a measured calculation replacing raw emotion. She decided to confront her family, but this time with precision. Later, I stumbled upon a letter she had written but never sent. The pages were filled with years of unnoticed service, long lists of emotional labor, sacrifices that had gone unacknowledged. Every line dripped with honesty, every word a quiet scream of the patience she had been forced to carry alone. Then came the shock. Greg had been secretly pocketing the money Laura contributed to household expenses. I stared at the numbers, the proof glaring, my stomach twisting. This was not just neglect. This was betrayal in its most blatant form. Emma, as if sensing the unraveling, was caught on camera mocking Laura, sneering at her efforts with cruel glee. There was no room for denial now. Undeniable proof of the disrespect and humiliation Laura had endured. And then, almost poetically, came the call from her former boss. "Laura, your talent is undeniable. I've never forgotten what you bring to the table. You belong somewhere that values you." Her voice cracked, a mixture of validation and relief. Confidence, long buried under layers of disregard, ignited anew. The turning point arrived that evening. Laura, standing in the living room where countless slights had occurred, spoke. Her voice was calm, steady, and cutting. "I will no longer be your unpaid servant," she declared. The words hit like a hammer. Faces turned pale, murmurs rose, and silence filled the gaps where excuses had once lived. Greg's attempts to guilt her backfired spectacularly. Every manipulation he tried, every snide remark fell flat against her unwavering composure. I watched almost in disbelief as the power in the room shifted. Laura was no longer the quiet victim. She was the one holding authority now, her dignity unassailable. The emotional weight she had carried for years began to lift. Her shoulders, once slumped under invisible burdens, straightened. There was a light in her eyes, subtle but undeniable, as she spoke of plans for her future, plans that belonged solely to her, plans unshackled by obligation or entitlement. In that moment, the house felt different. The air itself seemed to recognize the change. Justice had arrived quietly, not with a scream, but with precision, patience, and the power of finally standing up for oneself. And I realized that this was the first time Laura was truly free. The night of the family dinner, the air felt different. Laura had taken control, her rules, her expectations, her space. The table was set meticulously, not with grandeur, but with precision that demanded attention. Every detail whispered authority, every arrangement silently challenging the chaos that had ruled before. As the meal began, she leaned forward, her voice calm but unwavering. "Greg, we need to talk about the finances," she said, sliding documents across the table. The papers detailed the money she had contributed over the years, funds quietly pocketed by him. He froze, trying to mask surprise with irritation, but the evidence was undeniable. "Oh, as Emma, confident moments ago, faltered. Screens captured her mocking gestures, friends' testimonies lined up to confirm every sneer, every cruel laugh. Her cruelty was no longer hidden. It was laid bare for everyone to see." Laura's hand rested on a worn diary, and she opened it deliberately. Her voice cut through the chatter as she read aloud passages of her life. Years of silent service, unnoticed sacrifices, relentless giving without gratitude. Each sentence pierced the facades around her, exposing hypocrisy, entitlement, and neglect. Then came the declaration that shifted the room entirely. "I am taking legal steps to reclaim what has been misused," she said, eyes fixed on Greg. The words landed like stones, shaking him visibly. The power balance had tipped, and there was no turning back. Extended relatives present for the dinner watched as the truth unfolded. Injustice, entitlement, and hypocrisy were revealed in real time. Laura established boundaries, refusing to wash dishes, fold laundry, or perform the invisible labor she had long been forced to provide. She was no longer invisible. She was untouchable. I watched the subtle transformation with awe. The once invisible aunt now commanded the room with quiet authority, each gesture measured, each word deliberate. Her strength radiated, unspoken but undeniable. She even shared her plans publicly, an art exhibition dedicated to the unseen sacrifices of caretakers everywhere. The piece was more than art, it was testimony, validation, and tribute, demanding acknowledgement from anyone who witnessed it. Greg's control, once absolute, crumbled under her steadfast presence. Even Emma, caught between defiance and admiration, gave reluctant acknowledgement of Laura's power and resilience. The household began to shift. No longer was Laura taken for granted. Respect came on her terms, carefully negotiated, fiercely defended. I recorded every moment silently, capturing her emotional satisfaction as justice finally aligned with her endurance. Watching her reclaim her life, her dignity, and her authority, I realized the woman who had once been overlooked, humiliated, and exploited had transformed into the centerpiece of accountability, strength, and silent vengeance. Laura's life began to unfold on her terms. She moved forward, balancing her art with self-respect, no longer shackled by family obligations that had once defined every hour of her day. Each brushstroke, each canvas she completed, felt like a reclaiming of the self she had almost forgotten. The family dynamics shifted subtly around her. Some murmured apologies, hesitant and awkward, while others grumbled quietly, unwilling to admit defeat. Yet no one dared cross the line they had so often ignored before. The power of respect had finally settled in. Greg, forced to reckon with the consequences of his entitlement, adjusted uneasily. Financial missteps and social embarrassments followed him like shadows. The man who had once treated her as invisible now had to navigate life, acknowledging the weight of his misdeeds. Even Emma began to change. She approached Laura with caution, seeking guidance in ways she never had before, small steps signaling the beginnings of reflection and growth. Her mockery faded, replaced by tentative understanding. Laura reconnected with friends and supportive networks, surrounding herself with those who saw her worth. She rebuilt her emotional strength piece by piece, finally allowed to be unapologetically herself without the constant drain of others' expectations. I noticed something remarkable. She slept peacefully for the first time in years. No tossing, no quiet tears in the dark, just sleep, deep and untroubled, a silent testament to her regained autonomy. She began mentoring other relatives quietly, teaching lessons she had learned the hard way, the value of boundaries, the power of self-respect, the necessity of standing up for oneself, even when the world seems indifferent. The house, once suffocating with tension, now breathed easier. There was a calm in the air, though it carried the echoes of battles fought and lessons hard won. Laura's confidence and dignity became visible forces in our extended circle. Her presence commanded attention without demand, respect without threat. I reflected on the journey I had witnessed, the complexity of love, sacrifice, and silent endurance, the hidden wounds she carried, the patience she wielded, and the courage she summoned. All of it had led to this reclamation. And as the story settled, the lessons of resilience and standing up for oneself resonated through our shared experiences, leaving an imprint not only on our family, but on the way I would never again underestimate the quiet strength of someone long overlooked. How long would you endure before you finally said enough? I ask you, leaning closer as if sharing a secret you've been too afraid to admit. This isn't just a story about frustration or neglect. It's about a woman who transformed from invisible caretaker to an empowered, self-respecting force of her own making. Laura, once overlooked, dismissed, and taken for granted, now stands tall. Every slight she endured, every unnoticed effort has been met with justice, emotional, legal, and deeply personal. The tension that once suffocated her life has been replaced by a quiet, commanding presence that cannot be ignored. Let this be a warning. Silent abuse is insidious, and taking loved ones for granted comes with consequences. Look closely at the people around you, the ones whose sacrifices are invisible. Recognize them, appreciate them. Don't wait until their patience snaps, as Laura's did. Boundaries are not just words, they are armor. Self-worth is not optional, it is essential. In everyday relationships, these lessons are non-negotiable, and standing up for yourself is the bravest act you can commit. So I ask you, really ask you, would you have the courage to stand up like Laura, to draw the line, reclaim your dignity, and refuse to be anyone's unpaid labor, emotional or otherwise? And as we leave her story, the scene lingers. Laura preparing for her solo art show, brush in hand, a genuine smile on her face for the first time in years. Freedom, accomplishment, and joy radiate from her, a subtle cinematic cliffhanger that promises the world is hers to take. Share your story in the comments. Have you stood up for yourself or someone you love? Have you confronted those who took your kindness for granted? Reflect on it, feel it, and remember the quiet power of someone who finally refuses to be invisible. Because in the end, Laura's journey is not just hers. It is a mirror for all of us, a reminder of endurance, courage, and the price of silent strength.